All right, before we dive into the specifics of BlindSquare, I want to say a couple things about GPS in general that will help you get the most out of BlindSquare and any GPS app or device that you use. And the first thing has to do with the limited accuracy of GPS. So, the accuracy of GPS is influenced by a number of factors, but in general, it's accurate up to about 15 to 30 yards. And that means that it works really, really well over long distances. Say if you are getting navigational guidance towards something that's a mile away or several hundred yards away, then it's going to give you very, very accurate instructions. But when you get very close to your destination or the point of interest that you may be walking towards or the address that you may be tracking with your GPS device, once you get very close to it, within that 30-yard radius or so, you might as well ignore what the GPS is telling you, because at that point it really doesn't understand, it doesn't know where you are in relationship to the actual point of interest. And at that point you have to rely more on your traditional orientation mobility techniques using landmarks and things like that to close that very small gap at the end. And the other important thing that I want to mention about GPS is how it determines which way that you are facing. And some of the guidance that it will give you is in relationship to the way that you're facing. So for instance, when you use BlindSquare, one of the ways that you can receive guidance is according to the clock face. So it may tell you your distance to your destination and the direction that you would need to be walking in to reach it according to the clock face. So for example, it might say Dunkin' Donuts is 200 yards at 1 o'clock, meaning that it's mostly straight ahead and slightly off to the right. But that 1 o'clock direction that it's giving to you is based on the direction that it assumes that you're facing. So how does it know which way you're facing? Well, basically, when you walk in a straight line between point A and point B, it assumes that you're facing towards point B. If you were to stop and turn in place on your way towards point B, the GPS app may not detect that you've done that. It will still assume that you're facing towards point B, even if you stop and turn around 180 degrees and are facing towards point A. And if you're walking in that straight line from point A to point B, but then you change direction significantly, then there is sort of a lag or a delay between when the GPS registers that you've made that turn. So if you've ever driven and used GPS in your car, then this should be a pretty familiar situation to you. If you're driving down one road and then you make a sharp turn onto another, there's a little bit of a delay between when the GPS reorients, recalibrates, rotates, however you want to think of it, and shows you facing in that new direction. So the same thing is true when you're walking. If you're walking in a straight line from point A to B, but then you make a turn and change direction significantly, there's usually a delay before it will register that you're facing towards a new direction, and it will still think you're facing towards point B for a while. And usually you want to walk about 30 yards, which, as I mentioned a moment ago, is about the limitation of GPS's accuracy. So if you walk about 30 steps after you've made a turn or after you've changed direction, by that point the GPS should have recalibrated and will now properly detect the new way that you're facing, and therefore the instructions after that point will be accurate. But if you're walking in a straight line and then make a turn and are listening to the instructions that the GPS is giving you, before you've walked 30 steps or 30 yards in that new direction, those instructions may not be accurate, because they may be based on you facing towards point B still before you've made the change in direction. So with those two caveats in mind, number one being just the overall limitation of the accuracy, and number two being how it detects and assumes which way you're facing, if you know those limitations and how to work with them, then you'll get a lot out of GPS and it'll be your best friend. If you don't understand those two things, then you might be very frustrated and you might think that the device is not accurate or that it's not giving you the right information. But as long as you only trust it after you've established a straight line of travel for 30 yards in a direction, and you understand that it's not going to get you exactly to the door of your destination and that you have to use landmarks and traditional orientation mobility techniques to close that small little gap at the end, then you'll appreciate and get a lot out of GPS. All right, so we are on the main screen of BlindSquare now, and I want to begin by describing the layout of where certain features and functions and buttons are located within and on the screen. Because if you are somewhat familiar with where to find a certain button, you'll be a lot more efficient at using the app, so that you don't have to always be swiping to the left or to the right, scrolling through many things on the screen until you land on what you want. If you know where it's located spatially on the screen, you can find what you're looking for a lot faster than just using left and right swipes with VoiceOver. So across the top edge of the screen, or the top row of the screen, is where most of the main features are located. So on the very top row from left to right, we have Search, Add Place, Tools, Foursquare, Other, which is more like your settings or your preferences, Filters, and a Mute Speech button. So the regular search is located all the way to the top left, the mute speech button is all the way to the top right, and everything else is in the middle of that top row. On the second row, and this goes from one edge of the screen to the other, all across the second row is something called the radius. And I'll explain what that does later. Underneath the radius, now in a more of a column format, going from top to bottom, we have different categories, starting with My Places. That's My Places is directly beneath the radius. Then Shared Places, and then we get into all these other categories: Arts and Entertainment, College and University, Food, Nightlife Spot, Outdoors and Recreation, Professional and Other Places, Residence, Shop and Service, and Travel and Transport. So that is the basic layout of the main screen, and I would urge you to take some time to familiarize yourself with how to locate each of the things that I've just mentioned without having to swipe to the left or the right and scroll through everything using VoiceOver. If you have an idea of where to locate the Add Place button, or if you know where to locate the radius and things like that, you're going to operate BlindSquare a lot more efficiently and probably enjoy using it quite a bit more. All right, before we start using BlindSquare, the first thing that you may want to do after you install it is to go into your Other menu, which for sighted users, the icon kind of looks like a gear or a cog. And for people using VoiceOver, this is going to be located on the main screen on the top row, about 4 swipes to the right from the search button. So when we go into the Other menu, we'll need to swipe to the right once to land on Settings. When we open up Settings, most of the things here you're going to leave as they are, but there might be a few settings that you want to adjust. The first thing you might want to adjust is what is your distance unit. You have the option of choosing between meters, feet, or yards, and you can go with whatever is most intuitive to you, however you think of distance best and what makes the most sense. But my recommendation is to go with yards, because the average person's stride is close to a yard, usually just a little bit less. But if you're getting guidance to a destination and it's telling you it's 100 yards, well, you can think to yourself, well, that's a little bit over 100 steps. And I think that that's a more intuitive measure of distance than feet is for most people. So I usually select yards as my distance unit. The other thing that you may want to adjust in your settings menu is the speech rate and the volume. So with speech rate, this is not the speech rate of VoiceOver that you might access, say, with like the rotor and make an adjustment that way. This is the speech rate of the voice that is native and innate to the BlindSquare app itself. And sometimes, by the way, when you're using BlindSquare with VoiceOver, you'll get what I call crosstalk, where the VoiceOver voice and the BlindSquare voice are talking over each other, and it's like two people chatting, and can be a little bit confusing. But just so you know, this speech rate is separate from the VoiceOver speech rate, so you'll want to adjust those independently of each other. And I recommend keeping the BlindSquare voice's volume all the way up, and that way it will correspond one-to-one with the actual main volume that you would set on your phone using the volume buttons. If you have this volume set anything less than the maximum, you'll probably find it pretty difficult to hear the BlindSquare voice over the sound of traffic and things like that. So I recommend keeping the volume all the way up. That's probably all you need to adjust within your settings menu. The defaults for everything else is probably how you want them. So I'm going to back out of the settings menu for now. And the first thing that I'm going to explain is just the normal search. So this is the search button that is located at the very top left of the main screen, has the icon of a magnifying glass for sighted users. And this is the tool that we would use if we know specifically the address of a place that we want to get to, or the name of the place that we want to get to. So if I select search and then do a double tap on VoiceOver, it brings up the search menu and it puts my cursor in a text box where I can either type using the keyboard or I can dictate what I want to search for. And beneath that text bar, there's also a history of what you've searched for recently, so that you don't have to type in again something that you just typed in, say, the day before or whatever. So just for example's sake, I am going to type in CVS. And after you finish typing, you have to go down to the very bottom right of the screen and locate the button that actually says search to tell it that you're done typing and you actually want it to perform the search. So I'm giving it a second to get me some results here. So BlindSquare found 54 places that match CVS, and it automatically sorts them according to distance, with the closest one being first. So if I swipe to the right, it'll display that first list result. It tells me it's CVS Pharmacy in Watertown. It's 450 yards at my 8 o'clock. And then I could keep swiping through the list to find all the other results that it found that match CVS, getting further and further away from me according to distance. So I'm going to choose that first one that's closest to me, and I'm going to double tap on it. And this brings me to a new screen called the Place Summary screen. And you will get to this screen through a number of different ways. Whenever you select a specific destination, such as an address or something like that, from a list that you've searched for, it will bring you to this screen, Place Summary screen. Whenever you go to a new screen on BlindSquare, it's going to start out by highlighting the back button. One swipe to the right will read you the heading of that screen, which in this case is the actual name of the place. One more swipe to the right will land you on a button that says Edit. In this case, it is dimmed. I cannot edit the Place Summary screen for CVS yet because I have not saved it as one of my favorite spots yet. When you save a place as a favorite, then you can edit things like the name of the place, and you can reset the coordinates for it and things like that. But if it's not a favorite, you cannot edit it. So that's why that button is dimmed right now. If I swipe to the right and land on this switch that says favorite and I turn it on, now the edit button is not dimmed anymore, and I could double tap and edit certain information about this place. All right, after the favorite button, we land on a link that says Start Tracking, and just after that, there's one that says Plan a Route, or Plan a Route. Those are the two options that you have for getting guidance to this particular spot. One is sort of more involved, more advanced than the other. So Start Tracking is the more simple of the two. Plan a Route is the more complicated one. When you do Start Tracking, BlindSquare is going to give you two pieces of information as you walk towards that place. It's going to continually update you on the overall distance between you and that place, and it's going to give you directions according to the clock face. So it's going to tell you things like CVS is 450 yards at 8 o'clock, and as you get closer, it might say CVS is 100 yards at 7 o'clock, and so on. It's not going to tell you the name of the street that you need to walk down or the name of the street that you need to turn on to get there. BlindSquare itself does not have an atlas, a road atlas built into it, and therefore it cannot access that information to tell you the exact streets to turn on. It can tell you your approximate address as you're walking. No matter what street you're on, it can detect what street you're on, but it can't actually plan a route between different streets and calculating where to make turns and then how to tell you where to make turns like that. So it's only going to give you this direction according to the clock face. And I use the phrase "as the crow flies" to describe how it's telling you to get there. It's telling you which way you would go if you were a bird and could fly over every obstacle in your way, or if you were a ghost and you could walk through walls and things like that. So it doesn't understand what buildings or other obstacles or barriers may be in your way. It's just telling you the shortest distance from a straight line from where you are to your destination is according to whatever number around the clock face. So when you're using that mode, you'll probably, the start tracking mode of getting guidance, you're probably going to use it in an area where you're already pretty familiar with the layout of the streets, so that you can kind of use your own mental map of the area to decide where to make turns. Or if you know that you're just very, very close to the destination that you're going to and you're not going to have to make many turns in the first place, then start tracking can be sufficient. But if you're in a less familiar area where you don't know the layout of the roads at all, then you're probably going to want to go with the second option, which is plan a route. And as I was saying before, BlindSquare does not have a road atlas built into it. So for BlindSquare to be able to give you those turn-by-turn directions and naming the specific streets that you'll need to turn on, it has to work in conjunction with a third-party mapping software like Apple Maps or Google Maps or something like that. So if I double tap plan a route here, the first thing that it's going to ask me is which third-party app do I want to use. So I recommend using Apple Maps, which in BlindSquare it just says Maps, but that's Apple Maps. Google Maps is very good, and there's other options that you may have already installed on your phone, like this phone happens to have one called Navigon and Sendero. These are all road atlases or road apps. But there's a reason why I recommend Apple Maps especially as opposed to Google Maps. And the shortcoming of Google Maps is that there, at least to this point, there is no way to force Google Maps to repeat what it just said. So if you're walking down the street and it tells you that you need to turn on such and such road in 100 yards, but you don't hear that because of loud traffic or whatever, there's no way to get it to repeat what you're supposed to be doing at that moment in time. But with Apple Maps, there is. So to me, that's a pretty important feature to have, to be able to make it repeat itself at any time. So I say go with Apple Maps. So this isn't a tutorial on Apple Maps, but I am going to briefly walk you through what it's like after you choose Apple Maps, after having chosen the plan a route option for getting guidance. So I'm going to double tap Maps. BlindSquare is going to revert to the main screen for a moment. So you may hear it say search button or something like that, because that's the default thing that's going to highlight. But after a few seconds, it will start Apple Maps and make that the active app on your screen. And what BlindSquare does for you is it basically fills in your starting point and your destination into Apple Maps, saving you that initial setup process. So it took my current location and put it in the from section here, and it put in the destination of CVS as the to destination. Another good thing about Apple Maps is your ability to preview every step of the route before you actually start traveling. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second. One other thing I want to mention is at the very bottom row of the screen, once you start Apple Maps, you have these different transportation modes: drive, walk, public transit, or ride. And this should be on whatever setting you last used Apple Maps with. So if you last had it on walk mode, when you restart it, it should still be on that mode. But it's worth checking to make sure that the instructions that it's given you are optimized for the mode of transportation that you're going to be using. So you want to make sure that it says walk selected if you're walking. If you swipe to the left from those different modes of transportation, you will land pretty soon on a button that says go. and that's what you're going to double tap on when you're ready to actually start walking. But if you swipe to the left one more time from the go button, you'll land on an estimated time for you to travel to the destination and the distance. And if you double tap at this point, you will get a preview of all of the different steps that you're going to have to take to get there. So it starts out by telling you your starting point, and if you start swiping to the right, it's going to give you your individual instructions. So for the example that I'm doing right now, it's telling me that I need to walk 600 feet and then I take a right onto Taylor Street. Then I walk 370 feet and take a left onto Mount Auburn Street. I walk 40 feet and take a right onto Baptist Walk, and so on. So this is a good way to kind of preview the steps of your route, and then you'll know what to expect as you're going. Once I hit the go button, then it's going to start giving me those same instructions one step at a time and updating based on my actual GPS location. When I get close to the next time that I need to make a turn, the directions will change and be announced to me. And a moment ago I was saying that I prefer Apple Maps because of the ability to force it to repeat its instructions. And I want to show you how you do that. So up here in the top portion of the screen, it says 570 feet, take a right onto Taylor Street. So this is where you would need to touch on the screen or swipe to get it to repeat what you're supposed to be doing at that moment. And that's basically all there is to using Apple Maps. Now, when you're using Apple Maps and the plan a route method of getting guidance, as opposed to that start tracking method, you get everything that Apple Maps is going to tell you, in addition to BlindSquare giving you the same thing that it would if you did start tracking. So you're still going to get the distance and the clock face direction to where you're going from BlindSquare while you're using Apple Maps. However, if Apple Maps is the active app on the screen, then there's no way to force BlindSquare at any given moment to tell you your clock face and your distance to your destination. If you want to do that, then you need to use the app switcher and switch back to BlindSquare. And there's two ways to get it to tell you your clock face and distance to your destination. The way that you do that using menus, and by the way, this is probably not how you're usually going to do it, but I just want to show you this, is to go into your Tools menu, which again is on the very top row, has the icon of a wrench. And in your Tools menu, it would be this option, your location. But the quicker way to access that feature is just to use the shake gesture of your phone. For those of you who don't know what the shake gesture is, the shake itself is kind of a misleading name for the gesture. You don't shake it back and forth like a rattle. It's more like you take your phone and swing it through the air, making a very sudden, quick stop. And that will trigger the very same thing that I showed you getting to in the Tools menu, your location. So that is tied to the shake gesture by default. And whenever you do the shake gesture, as long as BlindSquare is the active app on your screen, then you will get an updated distance and clock face direction to your destination, as well as an estimate of your approximate address. But if BlindSquare is not the active app on the screen, if you have Apple Maps running as the app, then you will not be able to use that shake gesture, and you'll need to switch back to BlindSquare to be able to use it. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to show you is called a category search, which is in contrast to the regular search that we've already talked about. The regular search being the one that's at the very top left corner of your main screen with the magnifying glass icon. And again, that one is for when you know the address or the specific name of the place that you're looking for. The category search, on the other hand, is used when you don't have a specific place in mind, but you want to know what's in the general vicinity that fits into that category. So, for example, you're in an unfamiliar area and you want to know what restaurants are around. You don't have a specific one in mind, but you just want to know what your options might be. In this case, you would use the food category search. So all of the category searches are performed from the main screen, and they're located beneath the top row of buttons, beneath the radius. The very first one is My Places, but really it starts with arts and entertainment. Then college and university, food, nightlife spot, outdoors and recreation, professional and other places, residence, shop and service, and travel and transport. So those are the main categories. There are several more specific subcategories that I'll show you how to access in a moment. But for now, we're going to start out just with doing a simple food category search. So I'm going to highlight the food category, double tap, and that takes me to a new screen with the list of results that it found. And on this screen, every result that it found actually appears twice in two different lists. One of the lists is sorted by popularity and the other is sorted by distance. So I don't know how BlindSquare actually determines what is more popular than another place, and I'm usually more interested in knowing what is closest to me, so I want to go to the start of the list that's sorted by distance. The quick way to do that using VoiceOver is to use your rotor and set it to headings, which will allow you to switch between to quickly jump between the different lists between the two different lists sorted by popularity and distance. So if I swipe down, it jumps me directly to where it says sorted by distance, and now I can start swiping to the right to go through them one at a time. So the closest one to me is going to be at the top, and they're going to get farther and farther away as I swipe to the right going to the next result. So we'll come back to this in just a second, but I mentioned how there was much more specific subcategories. To get to those subcategories, I still want to have my rotor set to headings, and I can swipe down to the very bottom beneath all of the results, and I get to list of subcategories. And if I start swiping to the right now, these are all of the subcategories. And sometimes they can be highly specific. So in food, it starts with Afghan restaurant, African restaurant, American, Asian, Australian, Austrian restaurant, bagel shop, bakery, barbecue joint, and so on. So obviously there's not always going to be any results in all of these categories depending on where you are. But if you choose one that's more reasonable, say let's try barbecue joint here. If I double tap this, it will be as if I did a new food category search, but this time with the specific criteria being only barbecue places. So this is going to give me a new list of results, again sorted by distance, and there we go. There's one within about a mile of me called Village Smokehouse, Tony G's Barbecue, West Street Tavern, Silk Road, The Deck, Sammy D's, etc. So that is how you can get to specific subcategories. You would start by going to the main screen, which I'll go back to now. Choose the main category. I'll do a different one now. I'll do arts and entertainment. And then with the rotor set to headings, I can scroll down to the bottom very quickly, and there's my list of subcategories. So in arts and entertainment, the subcategories are amphitheater, aquarium, arcade, art gallery, bowling alley, casino, circus, etc. But the only way to access those subcategories is by first doing a search in the main category. So I'm going to go back with food, and I'm going to jump down to sorted by distance again, and I'll pick one that's pretty close. Domino's Pizza is only 110 yards away. By the way, in the list of results here, you may come across some results that say things like menu or phone or whatever. And that means that when you double tap on that place and go to the place summary screen, it will include a link to the menu, or the phone number will be right there ready for you to use if you need to. All right, so I will choose one I'll choose Domino's Pizza for my list of results, and when I double tap on it, it takes me to the same exact screen as we saw before when we did the regular search, to what's called the place summary screen, which is where I have my two different ways of getting guidance to it: start tracking and plan a route that we already talked about. And I still have the option to add it into favorites. And I've got the phone number, I've got a link to the website, I've got the actual address, and all these sorts of things. So that is a category search. It's used when you don't have a specific place in mind, but you just want to know what's around, what's nearby that fits into that category. So the next thing that we'll talk about is My Places, which are also known as favorites within BlindSquare. Those things are exactly synonymous. They are literally the same thing. A My Place or a favorite is the same thing. And usually you would think of these favorites or My Places as being custom locations that you capture the GPS coordinates of and save it. So it's not necessarily a specific address. It may just be it may be near your driveway that leads to your house or something like that, and you want to capture that spot. So the quick way to create a new one is from the main screen, being on the top row. The very second button to the right of regular search has the icon of a circle with the plus sign in the middle of it, and that's called the Add Place button. So if I double tap here, BlindSquare is going to capture the GPS coordinates of where I am currently, and it's going to attempt to name the place automatically based on my approximate address. So right now I'm at home, and it thinks that I'm somewhere between 83 and 87 Arsenal Street in Watertown. But that may or may not be what I actually want the name of this place to be. Sometimes the address is what I want it to be, sometimes not. So I'm going to double tap to begin editing the actual text of the name of the place. And it still has all the text 83 to 87 Arsenal Street filled in. And so if I want to name it something new, I probably want to delete that. And it is possible to delete it hitting your delete button over and over and over again. But the fastest way is once you double tap and are editing the text field, if you swipe to the right once, you'll land on a clear text button. And if you double tap that, all of the text in the name of the place field will be wiped clean, and you are good to go. Either you can now start typing or using dictate. So instead of having this place be named by the address, I'm just going to call it home. So I'm going to type in home in the name of the place field, and then to tell it that I'm done typing, I need to go down to the very bottom right and find this done button and double tap. Okay, so now if I swipe past the name of the place, I get onto a switch button that says alert distance when approaching this place, and the default is set to off. Now, right now, I haven't explained to you at this point yet anything about filters or how that would interact with this particular switch button, but for now, you don't necessarily have to have this switched on to be alerted when you're approaching this place. It's a little bit misleading. When you do have this button turned on, then no matter what your filters are set to, you will always, no matter what, be alerted when you get within a certain distance of the place that you can specify. But if the switch button is turned off, then it may depend on what your filters are set to whether or not you are alerted to it. So if you absolutely always want to be notified when you're close to that spot, you'd want to turn this switch button on. And then when you turn it on, your cursor jumps to this new text field where you would enter a number that corresponds to how far away you want to be notified. If your distance unit that you set in settings is yards, then this number will be how many yards away. If your distance unit is feet, then this number will be how many feet. Now recall at the very beginning I was talking about the limitation of GPS accuracy and that it's only accurate up to about 30 yards. So it doesn't make sense to put the distance anything smaller than 30 yards. So I usually do anywhere from like 50 to 100 or something like that. So I'll put in 55 here, and then I'll hit done. And everything is done now, except that we actually need to save the name of the place and the fact that we've put in 55 yards as the alert distance. So I'm going to find the save button here and double tap. And now we have created a new place named home. Well, where is it? How do we access it? That would be here in the My Places. I think of it as a folder. I think of it as like opening a folder on the computer that contains all of your files that are your places. So this My Places folder or button is located just beneath the radius on the main screen. So it's near the top, not quite at the very top of the page. Now if we double tap My Places, we're opening the folder. And just like when we did a category search, they're sorted according to popularity and by distance. So if I go down here to sorted by distance, the first one is the one that I just made, home. It says about 0 yards away because I'm sitting in the same spot as I was when I created it. But I've got some other ones marked here, like the grocery store, 0.71 miles away, or the bus stop for the 57 bus, etc. These are ones that I've created already. So here's the one that I just created, home. And if I double tap it, it opens up to the place summary screen, which we've seen before. Here is the two options for getting guidance. Again, start tracking and plan a route. And we could use those the same way as I've shown you before. There is a second way to add a place into My Places, which was that favorite switch button that comes up when we find something through a search. So if I do a search now, and I'll use my search history here to put in CVS, search for it again. And now I'll choose the first result, the one that's closest to me. And now I'm on its place summary screen, and I had already added this one to my favorites before. So if this switch button is off, it's taken out of my favorites, out of my Places folder. If I turn it back on, now it will be there. If I go back to my favorites folder from the main screen, we will see CVS show up. And there it is. So that is there because I hit the favorite switch button to add it into My Places. All right, the next things that I'm going to explain are the radius and the filters. And the reason why I'm doing them both is because they kind of influence each other. They work together. So when you are just walking down the street, BlindSquare can be announcing to you points of interest that you're not actually getting guidance to. It can just tell you about what businesses are around. So how does it decide what to tell you or what not to tell you? That's where your radius and your filters come in. Your radius determines how far away BlindSquare will tell you about anything, any point of interest that's been marked. So it ranges from a setting at the lowest to about 25 yards, and at its highest is a little over a mile. So you can imagine yourself being at the center of a circle, and the radius is a distance from you out into the distance in all directions, and anything inside that radius will be announced to you, and anything that's beyond that radius would be excluded. When you are in a very densely populated area like the downtown part of a city, and there's lots of businesses and lots of places of interest around, you probably want this radius to be set to something fairly small, like 100 yards or so, because much more than that and you're going to be getting bombarded with too much information. BlindSquare is going to be telling you things that are a few blocks away, and it's just never going to stop talking because there's too much around. When you're in a more suburban or a rural area, you probably want to bump it up to something a little bit bigger, as places tend to be more spread out. But by default, I usually leave this on something between like 100 and 200 yards. So whereas the radius influences what's announced to you in terms of how close it is, the filters determine what is announced to you based on what category it fits into out of all of the main categories that you can do a category search for. So to change the filters, that is one of those main buttons on the very top row of the screen. I'll double tap on filters, and at the very top of this new filter page, we have this menu where we can change between all, streets only, my places, streets and my places, places only, or none. And there's two settings here that I use most often, either all or streets and my places. So if you didn't want BlindSquare to announce anything to you other than streets and intersections that you're coming up upon and places that you've created, this is the setting you'd want to have it on, streets and my places. Everything else will be filtered out and ignored. When you set it to all, that doesn't actually mean that everything is going to be included. When it's set to all, the bottom half of the screen here gets populated with checkboxes, one checkbox for each of the different categories from the main page. So we have my places, shared places, arts and entertainment, college and university, etc., all 11 of them. And here you can then check or uncheck each category individually if you want things to be announced within that category or not. So what I'll often do is set the filters to all, and then I'll come down to the very bottom right of the screen and there's a deselect all button, and that unchecks all 11 of the different checkboxes so that nothing will be included. Everything is filtered out. And then I'll just check the one or two boxes that I'm interested in. So I might deselect them all and then swipe through until I find food and double tap its checkbox to select it. And now only things in the food category will be announced to me. Everything else will be excluded. So the radius and the filters work together to determine what BlindSquare is going to announce to you about the environment just as you're walking through it. It has nothing to do with you getting guidance to anything. It's just what BlindSquare is going to tell you about where you are. The filter and radius will influence how certain other tools that I'm going to get into shortly behave and how they work. But the filters and the radius essentially do the same job. They determine what that tool is going to give to you based on distance and category. Now, a little trick that is kind of a workaround, but it's a good trick to know with BlindSquare is how to get it to sort of re-trigger and tell you about what's around you if it's already announced it but you didn't hear it. And the trick is this: is to highlight your radius, change the value either up or down a notch, and put it right back to where you were. And that sort of resets everything, and BlindSquare will re-announce anything that is within your radius and that fits within the filters that you have set. So if you didn't hear it because of traffic or whatever, then that is your trick to get it to tell you again. It's just to change the radius and put it right back, and it will re-announce things that you might have not heard a moment ago. All right, now we're going to get into the Tools menu. This is, again, one of the buttons that's on the very top row. It is just to the right of the Add Place button. And when we go into Tools, there is just a couple of things in here that you're going to be using often. And those are Look Around and Around Me. They have a very similar name, and they do very similar things. The main distinction between Look Around and Around Me is that Look Around is unidirectional, meaning that it only tells you about things in one direction, whereas Around Me is omnidirectional. It tells you about things in any direction from you. And these are both used to find out about what places of interest and businesses are nearby. The Look Around one is the one that is unidirectional, is also really useful for figuring out what intersections go in a given direction. So you might, well, first of all, how this works is that when you activate the Look Around feature by double tapping on it, BlindSquare will take you back to the main page, but at this point you can now rotate your phone in a given direction, and it will make this metallic sort of clinking sound to register that, or to tell you that it registers that you're changing the direction. But when you hold it still in a given direction, it will say to the, and then whatever cardinal direction, it will say to the west or to the southwest, to the east, whichever way you're pointing it. And then it will start to announce all of the intersections that are in that direction. So a lot of times you might use this look around tool by pointing it parallel to the street that you're walking along, and it will tell you the upcoming intersections according to which one is closest to you, then the next closest, and so on. And after it has finished announcing to you all the intersections that are within the distance of your radius, then it will start to tell you about all of the places of interest that are in that direction and that fit within according to your filters. So if you have only the food category selected in your filters, when you use this look around tool, it's only going to tell you about things that fit into the food category. So it will stay in the look around mode until you cancel it. You can cancel it either by going into the tools menu and choosing stop looking around, or the quicker way and easier way to stop it is by using the shake gesture on your phone. If you do the shake gesture, it will cancel the look around. So I'm going to turn up the volume on the iPhone so that you can hear the look around feature, how it works.
Cancel.
So if I rotate the phone, there's the
My places. To the north. To the north. To the north. To the southeast. Red Street and North Beacon Street, 60 yards. South Irving Park, Royal Street and North Irving Park, 270 yards. Shop and service, salon barbershop. Massage studio. Real estate office. Automotive shop.
and I'm still in look around mode, so if I rotate it a new direction,
To the north. To the southwest. Patton Street and Arsenal Street, 20 yards. Auburn Court and Mount Auburn Street, 270 yards. Irving Street and Mount Auburn Street, 310 yards. Mount Auburn Street and Palfrey Street, 330 yards. Mount Auburn Street and Phillips Street, 360 yards. Mount Auburn Street and Marshall Street, 390 yards. Palfrey Street and Spring Street, 470 yards. Marshall Street and Spring Street, 530 yards. Marion Road and Common Street, 610 yards. Marion Road and Spring Street, 620 yards. Travel and Transport, Bus Stop. Enterprise Rent-A-Car. General Travel. Rental car location. Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Hotel.
all right, so that is the look around feature. I'm going to go into Tools
LTE, Tools, button, Tools,
and tell it to stop looking around.
Stop looking around. Stop looking at my places. Look around feature has been turned off.
And now I'm going to demonstrate to you the other tool, the one that is omnidirectional within the Tools menu, which is called Around Me. So now you do not have to rotate your phone or point it in any direction. It's just going to tell you about things in all directions. So I'll turn the volume up and activate that.
Around me. Button. Around me. My places. Search. Around me. Toyota of Watertown. 280 yards at 3 o'clock. The meet spot. 330 yards at 10 o'clock. Super 8 Motel. 145 yards at 3 o'clock. Enterprise Rent-A-Car. 35 yards at 12 o'clock. Starbucks. 215 yards at 11 o'clock. Wild Willie's Burgers. 155 yards at 9 o'clock.
All right, so that is the Around Me feature. So the next feature that I want to walk you through is called Simulate This Location. And you can do this from any place summary screen. So whether you find a place by searching, by doing a category search, or you pull it up in My Places, on any place summary screen you'll have the option to simulate that place as your current location. Meaning you're going to trick your phone in, or trick your GPS into thinking that you're there, even though in real life you're somewhere else. Why would you want to do that? If you simulate a location and then do, let's say, for example, a category search, it's going to tell you about the things in that category that are near to your simulated location, not near to where you actually are in real life at that moment. So it's really good for kind of exploring what's around an environment that you're going to be traveling to in the future instead of what's around where you are at the present. So I'm going to walk you through doing just that. I'm going to start out by doing a regular search, and I'm going to search for the address of the Boston Public Library, even though I'm a couple towns away in Watertown right now.
Search.
And I already did that a minute ago, so I have it here.
700 Boylston, Boston Law.
I have it here in my search history.
Selected. Search. Text search. Search. Found 56 places within a distance of about 0 yards to 16.88 miles.
And this very first list result that I'm about to swipe to here is the address that I typed in.
700 Boylston Street, Boston. Address, about 0 yards.
And
Address.
it said about 0 yards because I'm actually already simulating it. And I double tap it and go to the place summary
700
screen.
Boylston Street, 0 yards. Back, button.
Then the link,
Double tap to return to the previous screen.
the link to simulate it here is at the very bottom left corner. Simulate this location.
Simulate this location, button.
And I'll double tap that.
Double tap to simulate this. Places, 56. Heading.
And now
Simulated location is about 0 yards of your last simulation and 5.34 miles east of your current location.
there, and it's acknowledging right there that our simulated location is a little over 5 miles east of where I actually am currently. So now I'm going to do a food category search, and the results that I get are going to be places that fit in the food category that are near to the Boston Public Library, not near to where I actually am.
Food. Selected. Food. Food. Back. Button. Double tap to return to the previous screen.
And so now I can start, actually I'm going to do the same thing I did before where I use the rotor to get to headings.
Speech history. Headings.
And I'm going
Sorted by popularity.
I'm gonna-
230 yards.
to go
Heading.
down to sorted by distance.
Sorted by distance. Heading. Carrot. Thai restaurant. 25 yards at 11 o'clock.
So the closest thing to the Boston Public Library is a Thai restaurant. It couldn't give us the name of it because it's using some sort of other language besides English. We'll swipe to the right.
Bouchy, Boston. French restaurant. Menu. 35 yards at 10 o'clock. Sweet Bubble. Boston. Food truck. 45 yards at 10 o'clock. Tico. Boston. Mexican restaurant. 50 yards at 4 o'clock. The Catered Affair at BPL. Boston. Cafe. 55 yards at 12 o'clock. Max Brenner. Boston. American restaurant. 55 yards at 3 o'clock. Sorellina. Boston. Italian restaurant. Menu. 75 yards at 3 o'clock. Sweet Green. Boston. Salad place. Menu. 85 yards at 10 o'clock.
And as you can see, there's many places to eat within a very short distance of the Boston Public Library. So if I was planning a trip to the library and I didn't know what I wanted to get for lunch that day and I was planning to go somewhere nearby, this would be a great way to figure that out, to simulate the location of where I'm going to and then do a category search. And I'll go ahead and walk through the rest of this. Let's say that I decided that Sweet Green sounded interesting as a possibility, so I'll double tap it. Now I get to
Sweet Green. 85 yards at 10 o'clock. Back. Button.
I get to its place summary
Double tap to
screen.
return to the previous screen.
And let's say that I looked at the menu online. By the way, the link to that is
www. Button.
available right there. Or I could call the
Call.
phone number.
617-936-3464. Button.
And ask for the menu that way. But let's say that I decided that Sweet Greens is where I wanted to go for lunch on the day that I'm going to the library. So at this point, I might choose to add it to my favorites.
Favorite. Switch button. Off. Checked on.
And now I've got the place that I'm going to go to have lunch saved in my favorites folder, and I won't have to repeat this process when I actually go there. So I'm done simulating the location now. I don't want to be doing that anymore. So I need to turn that off so that I can use my GPS like normal again. So I'm going to go back to the main screen.
Back. Button. Double back. Food. Sweet green. Boston. Back. Button. Search. Button.
So now
Double tap to perform a search.
I'm back on the main screen, and I want to go to the Tools menu to end the simulation.
Add tools. Button. Tool alert. Select action. End simulation mode. Button. Search. Button. Double tap to perform a search. Simulation has been turned off. Pizza place. Domino's Pizza. 110 yards at 3 o'clock. Chinese restaurant. Speed off.
So that is simulating a location. Again, the idea is to trick the phone into thinking that you're somewhere else so that you can use the other tools like a category search or like the look around or around me feature as if you were already in that spot. Great for previewing an environment before you actually go there. Next feature I want to walk you through is called sharing a location. And you can do this in a few different ways. But the idea is that you would share your location with someone else, either someone who is another BlindSquare user or, say, a family member or a friend who is going to come pick you up where you are, and they're not exactly sure where you are, so you're going to share your location with them. Or you're going to share the location of a place that you want to meet someone at or something like that. So you can share a location from any place summary screen. So again, you can get to a place summary screen in different ways by doing a regular search, a category search, or by going to My Places and choosing a place from one there. So I'm going to do that. I'm on I'm in my My Places folder, and let's say I want to meet someone at the grocery. I've got the grocery marked as one of my favorites already. So I'm going to scroll until I get to grocery. And let's say I want to meet someone there, so I want to send them the location. So I'll double tap to go to the place summary screen for grocery.
Grocery 0.71 miles at 8 o'clock. Back button.
And
double tap to return to the previous screen.
The button for sharing the location is on the right edge of the screen, about midway down. Looks
Share
like
this place button.
So when I double tap share this place,
share this place, share this place, back button. Double tap to return to the previous screen.
I get different ways that I could share it. I could share it in an email, in a text message, I could copy it to the clipboard, etc. So I'm going to do it via text message this time. So I'm going to swipe until I get to text message.
Text message button. Alert. Send location link to open in.
Now I'm going to send it via text, but now it's asking me, do I want the link that's embedded in that text message to have the other person's message open up to BlindSquare or Apple Maps or Google Maps or whatever. So I want, when the person that I send this to receives it, I want it to open up in their, let's say I'm sending it to someone who's sighted and they use Google Maps. So I'm going to send them a text message that opens up this location in Google Maps.
Google Maps button. 2. Text field is editing. Insertion point at start.
So now I need to type in the phone number of who I'm going to send it to.
More. 5 0 1 5 5 1 0 5 2 4.
Okay, that's my own.
Return. Left paren 501, right paren 55.
And to actually send the text message, I need to find the sent button, which is this little green arrow for sighted users.
Show more. Message. Sent. Button.
Sent button is what we want.
Double tap and hold to add effect. Back. Button. Double tap to return to the previous screen.
Okay, so that has been sent to the phone number that I typed in, which is my own. So I'm going to switch phones here for a second and put my phone in front of you. And here is the text message that I received. Now I touch the link. And there we go. It's opening up in Google Maps. So you can see the pin here is the location of the grocery that BlindSquare had saved, and that would show anybody that you sent this to how to get there. So that concludes the tutorial for using BlindSquare. There are a handful of things that I didn't quite show in full detail. So if you have questions or comments, please do comment on the video, and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks a lot.